Where would we be without our sages? How would we understand and know what the Torah is saying without our sages? Let me give you an example. Parsha of Tetzaveh. In the Parsha of Tetzaveh, there's an unusual absence of Moshe's name. Since the birth of Moshe, which is described in the Torah, every Torah portion mentions Moshe. God spoke to Moshe. Moshe came. Moshe said. Moshe did. The one exception is this Parsha. From the beginning of Moshe's life until the end of Moshe's life, he is mentioned in every Parsha. But in Tetzaveh, his name does not appear. The sages tell us why. Because when Moshe was pleading for forgiveness for the people after they made the golden calf, Moshe said, if you don't forgive them, erase me from your book, from the Torah, God's book. Now, although God did forgive them, but the words of a tzaddik always are fulfilled. Sooner or later, somewhere, they're all fulfilled. So because Moshe said, erase me from your book, somewhere that was going to happen, even though his condition was fulfilled. God forgave them. Where was it fulfilled that his name was erased from the book? Parshas Tetzaveh. His name doesn't appear, so he has been erased from the book. Now, this might sound like a punishment. Moshe should not have said that, but because he said it, it happened. But it's not. There's something much deeper and much more beautiful about Moshe's name not appearing. Because although his name doesn't appear, everything, every statement is addressed to him. And you, without mentioning names, but you should tell the people and they should bring you pure oil for the menorah. The fact that Moshe's name is not mentioned makes it so clear that there is something about Moshe that we did not suspect and we could not know. Because if you ask anyone who is a little bit familiar with the Torah, if you were to ask them, who is Moshe? What is Moshe famous for? What is Moshe's biggest, strongest, deepest devotion? Anyone will tell you his devotion was Torah. Moshe is the man of Torah. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Zichru Teiras Moshe. He brought the Torah, he taught the Torah, he defended the Torah. He was the man of Torah. Aaron, on the other hand, his brother, he was the man of peace, the man of kindness. Everybody mourned the passing of Aaron. He was so popular. Most of the people mourned Moshe's passing, but not as much as Aaron's. Because Moshe was not known for his kindness. In fact, Moshe was quite critical with the people almost on a regular basis. He disciplined them. The fact that Moshe's name is erased or does not appear in this week's portion tells us that there is more to Moshe than meets the eye. What was Moshe's demand? Forgive the people or erase me from your book. I don't know what the book would look like without Moshe. What would Torah be without Moshe? Who was Moshe defending? People who made the Egel. Not the best of the best, the worst of the worst. And for the worst of the worst among the Jews, he was willing to have his name erased from the Torah. What do we see? What are we hearing here? That Moshe's devotion to his people, to the worst of his people, to the least of his people, was deeper than his commitment to Torah. He's willing to give up the Torah if that would help protect the Jew. So it turns out that Moshe's ahava, Moshe's chesed, was even greater than Aaron's chesed, even though Moshe was a disciplinarian. He was critical. He never said, I love you, I'm devoted to you, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful. But everything he did spoke of love, devotion, self-sacrifice, chesed. There are two kinds of kindness. There's an indiscriminate kindness, where you treat all people with the same degree of kindness, indiscriminate, like a guy who gives out tzedakah every single Sunday. This is true. Gives out tzedakah every single Sunday, sits at his desk, people file by, and everyone without exception, gets $100. No questions asked. An extreme example of kindness, generosity. There's another Baal Tzedakah who also sits every Sunday and gives out money. But when you file by, he wants to know, what is the need? Why are you asking for money? How much money? If your need is bigger than $100, he'll give you more. If your need is less than $100, he'll give you less. He will give you what you need. That's called judgment, not chesed. And yet, look what he's doing. He's giving generously, but with a cheshbon, with a judgment. A bigger problem deserves more, a lesser problem deserves less. In some way, the second guy who gives with judgment ends up closer to the people he's giving to than the first guy. Indiscriminate kindness is a lot of kindness. It's not very much closeness. Because it's indiscriminate, it's also impersonal. He doesn't know what you need. He doesn't know why you need. He just gives $100 because he's that generous. The one who asks, why do you need? What do you need for? How much is that? Doesn't seem as generous because he's giving conditions. And some people won't get $100 because their problem doesn't demand $100. Seems like a less generous person, but on an inner level, the pnimius, on the inside, he is closer to the people he's giving to than the indiscriminate and unquestioned kindness. So in some sense, the judgment, which is the opposite of kindness, the opposite of chesed, actually brings you in closer contact with the people you're being generous to. Aaron was famous for his indiscriminate kindness. All people deserve everything, deserve equal amounts, no questions asked. That's a whole lot of chesed. It's not a whole lot of closeness. Moshe's chesed had some element of gvura, judgment, discernment. But as a result, he got to know the people he's giving to. He empathized. He felt their need and gave accordingly. That was Moshe. How do we know this? Not on the surface. On the surface, more people grieved the passing of Aaron than the passing of Moshe. Aaron is Ish HaChesed. Kohen is Chesed. Moshe was Levi. Levi is Gvura. Judgment, discernment, discrimination. But in that discriminating style, there was a greater kindness beneath the surface. And the only way we know this is because Moshe's name does not appear in one portion of the Torah. So now we know Moshe's primary, ultimate commitment and devotion was to the people even more than to the Torah that he taught them. Everybody is a little Moshe, or there's a little Moshe in everybody. To some people, you are their Moshe. You are their source of information, the source of inspiration, the source of Torah knowledge. You're their Moshe Rabbeinu. Now we have a lesson. As important as the teaching is, the teaching that you're sharing, that you're giving to your students, to the people you influence, but the people must always come first. There's another very significant detail in this week's Parsha, in the story of Tetzaveh, and that is, the Torah says that Moshe should tell the people that they should bring to him the pure olive oil to be used in the menorah. What is the significance of bringing the oil to Moshe? Moshe doesn't light the menorah. Aaron lights the menorah. So shouldn't it say Moshe should tell the people to bring the oil to Aaron to light the menorah? No, it says they should bring the oil to Moshe to light the menorah, which means Moshe has to give the oil to Aaron. There's a strong, powerful message here too. Moshe is the one who inspires Jews. Moshe is the one who teaches, who enlightens, who gives direction, who reveals the purpose, who speaks God's message to the people. It sounds like a one-way street. Moshe gives and we benefit. The people benefit. Here the Torah says, Moshe should ask the people to bring something to him, contribute something to him that he would not have without them. So it's something like the benefits or the growth that comes to the teacher from the students. A student-teacher relationship is not a one-way relationship. As much as the teacher does for the students, there is something vital that the students do for the teacher. Otherwise, he's not a real teacher. If it's not a two-way street, if the student's learning and the student's desire to learn does not inspire the teacher, he's not a real teacher. He's just a guy doing a job. It's got to be a true relationship. What does Moshe Rabbeinu get from the people? What can the people contribute to Moshe? Pure oil. One of the ways of understanding it is this. Moshe is not your average person. Right from birth, Moshe was not your average person. First of all, his father was Amram, his mother was Yocheved. He's way ahead of us already. Ben Amram, that's no little thing. So he already has a head start on us. In addition to being Ben Amram, he was born circumcised. He was born speaking. He was born a prophet. And even as a young child, he prophesied. And he told his parents, I'm going to take the Jews out of Egypt. I'm going to remove the crown from Pharaoh's head and put it on my head because we're getting out of here. I'm leading the Jews out. Then God speaks to him at the burning bush. Then God invites him up to the mountain where they have a little face-to-face conversation, and he gives him the 10 commandments to bring down to the people. Moshe is empowered by God, one plague after another. Moshe is empowered by God. Raise your staff and split the sea. If you have that kind of relationship with God, is it at all surprising that you're a good person? That you're a good Jew? No, it's not surprising at all. In fact, you could argue Moshe really had no freedom of choice. How could he not obey? How could he not be completely devoted to God? Now, we may know that deep down inside, Moshe did have freedom of choice, and his devotion to God was out of freedom of choice. But come on, there was so much working in his favor. So can you say that his devotion to God was pure olive oil? Or was part of his devotion to God the fact that he witnessed miracles, that he performed miracles, that he was born to the head of the Jewish people at the time? He had so many gifts, privileges. You could think, mistakenly, but you could think that his devotion was not the purest. Had he not had those experiences, had he not seen what he saw, would he still be as devoted as he was? Moshe questioned himself. He asked himself those questions. But then he looked at the people who didn't have his gifts, the people who didn't have his advantages. In fact, he looked at the generation before Mashiach, who have no gifts and no privileges and no advantages at all. We didn't see Har Sinai, we saw a Holocaust. We didn't see a holy temple in its glory. We saw the destruction of Jewish homes and synagogues. Where does our devotion to God come from? The answer is pure olive oil. Moshe was so inspired by what he saw in the people without the advantages and without the privileges and without the gifts. And it inspired him so deeply, it humbled him so deeply, that part of his greatness came from that. A teacher who is inspired by his students' innocence, the students' simple, unadorned faith without the gifts, without even a support system. So it would be callous and wrong to say, well, Moshe, big deal. I mean, his father was a tzaddik, his mother was a tzaddik, his brother was a tzaddik, his sister was a tzaddik. I mean, what do you expect? Why would you be impressed that he served God diligently? Look at the support system he has. Look at the influences in his life. But take a Jew, put him out in a desert where he doesn't understand godliness, never sees godliness, never sees miracles, never sees a prophet, never speaks to a prophet, doesn't see a holy temple. What kind of Jew is this going to be? Moshe saw. So the Torah says, Moshe, ask the people to bring you pure olive oil. It will inspire you. It will strengthen you. It will deepen your conviction and your commitment, not only to God, but to them. That is the meaning of bring it to Moshe. Not for him to light the menorah. Aaron is going to light the menorah. But bring it to Moshe because he gives you a lot, you have to give back. He inspires you, you have to inspire him. The Rebbe told us this when he accepted the leadership. The Rebbe said, sure, I'll help you. I'll do everything I can. But if you think this is a one-way street, you are mistaken. You're dreaming. I will drive you to exhaustion, and you will drive me to exhaustion, and together we will bring Mashiach. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal, it's questions and answers, it's conversation. It's really relaxed, it's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program, there's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us, take a look, click the link below and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.